Edge banding on a slab plywood door is trimmed flush on two sides and is overlapping on the two remaining sides. For the two sides that are trimmed flush, I'm just going to set it to the width, which is 538 millimeters, on my miter saw fence, and I will cut all the pieces identically against the stop. By butting up my slab against the fence, I can use the MFT3 to help me mark off the lengths for my edge banding. Then I can take my piece over to the miter saw and cut it to size. After cutting it, still needs a little fine tuning, so I will use the plywood slab itself to mark off and trim off a little bit back at the miter saw. See that I have a few quaz dogs here, and this allows me to butt my piece up against the quaz dog so I have something to press against when I'm nailing. Using my pin nailer, I carefully apply the edge banding to the plywood. Make sure to push it flush against the surface of the MFT. In my opinion, the OF1010 is Festool's most versatile router. Not only is it light and easy to handle, the cut quality is great and the dust collection is excellent. Right now I'm going to show you two methods to trim the edge banding flush to the plywood door. In the first method, we won't be needing any accessories, just the router itself, along with the MFT3. I've chucked up a 1/2 inch bottom bearing flush trimming bit in the OF1010. And the bearing here is going to help guide the router along the surface of the plywood, and the router cutting edge here will trim off any excess edge banding, so then we'll be flush the surface of the plywood. Since it's a small diameter router bit, we're just going to use the highest speed setting. With the help of the Festool quick clamp, I clamp my piece into the MFT3 so that the top is flush with the top edge of the MFT3, and I clamp it down. And I have a piece of scrap here that helps indicate where the top of the MFT3 is. And I will repeat the same in the back and bring that flush and clamp it down. And the reason for doing this is because when we're using the router, if we just used it on the edge, it would be really tippy. But with the extra support from the MFT3, you can actually run the router along this surface, and there's plenty of support, so it'll be a stable operation. Now the downside of this method is that I'll have to do this for each of the 4 sides, and that's more time consuming. But I'll cut one edge and I'll show you how it's done. You'll see that most of the excess material is trimmed off, except for these nubs on the ends. But these will come off later when we do the other edge. In the second method, which is a little bit more easy, we'll be using the router horizontally, and that'll require some accessories. The first accessory we'll require here is this chip deflector, and this is going to result in optimal dust collection from the router. The second accessory we'll need is the edging plate, and this will help us hold the router in the horizontal position. And the third is the angle arm, which connects this assembly to the router. With the router unplugged, now I'm going to attach the chip deflector, and this goes on to the base of the router here. I'll just lock it down. You can always adjust it later. The angle arm attaches to the edging plate as such. This post goes in to the angle arm, and this dial is turned in order for the threads on the micro adjuster to engage. And you'll see that once it's engaged, this thing is locked in place. And then this knob here is turned just to bottom out against the post. Then I take the entire assembly and I lock the knob onto the OF1010 router. You can see this piece is able to slide in this slot here. And then we'll adjust that later. I've removed the chip catcher for the time being so we can see how to adjust this unit. First, I've loosened this knob up here. What I want to do is get this bearing flush on the surface of the ply. So I'm going to turn this micro adjuster and see how that drops down the router. And I want to make sure that there's no gap in between the bearing and the surface of the ply. Tighten that up. And I'll check the gap here and the gap here, so it doesn't look like there's any gap. So with that, then I can put the chip catcher back on. And this piece slides onto the router base. I'll adjust it such that this plastic piece sits flat on the surface of my scrap. Then I'll loosen this here, position it such that it's flat here, and tighten that knob down. And just make sure everything is tight. We're ready to go. Because I glued up all 4 pieces of my edge banding first, I have to watch out for this corner. Now, in order to clear this corner with the bearing guided bit, I'm going to have to pivot the router around the corner. I repeat this routing on all 4 sides until I've trimmed down all the edge banding so that it's flush with the plywood. Now look, we're all flush. You get the same results with both methods.